I was 28 when I realized my mom never saw me as a person, just a wallet with legs. I know that's a rough way to start, but that's the truth. My name's Aiden, and for most of my life, I tried to convince myself that if I just worked harder, made more money, and stayed generous, my mom and sister would eventually treat me like family instead of a walking ATM. I grew up thinking I was the lucky one for getting out of our small, broken-down neighborhood, landing a job in tech, and eventually moving to a quiet part of the city. To everyone else, I was the success story. But behind the curtains, I was the family piggy bank, tapped, drained, and rattled any time they needed something. And the worst part? I let it happen for way too long. I should have known better. But I think when you grow up with a single mom who's always reminding you how much she sacrificed for you, guilt doesn't just become an emotion, it becomes your compass. And when your younger sister is constantly being bailed out of every mess she creates, you learn to keep your mouth shut and your wallet open. That's just how things worked in our house. Mom raised us on her own, and to her credit, she really did hold things together for a while. But somewhere along the way, she started using motherhood as a card to cash in, reminding me, at every opportunity, how much I owed her. It started small. Aiden, sweetie, your sister needs a little help with her tuition. Then it became, can you spot me for rent this month? Things are tight. And eventually it turned into, why don't you just give me one of your credit cards? It'll be easier that way. That last one still makes me feel sick. Her favorite phrase was always, family takes care of family. What she meant was, I take care of them. My sister, Emma, is 25. She's smart when she wants to be, but she's never worked a full-time job longer than 3 months. Every time things got tough, new boss didn't vibe with her, the hours were too rigid, the dress code was oppressive, she'd quit. Then she'd fall back on mom, who would, in turn, fall back on me. Rinse and repeat. She had a knack for spending money she didn't earn and blaming everyone else for why she couldn't keep any. Designer bags, salon appointments, bottle service. Emma always seemed to have a lifestyle that screamed luxury, despite her bank account whispering otherwise. And me? I worked 12-hour days, sometimes weekends, managing product development for a mid-sized startup. I wasn't rich by tech world standards, but I lived well. I had a decent apartment, drove a leased Audi, and finally hit a 6-figure salary after years of grinding. I had no kids, no wife, just a steady income and a deeply embedded sense of responsibility. They knew that. They banked on it. Last Christmas, I invited them both over to my place. I was trying to re-establish boundaries, polite ones, anyway. I didn't want to come off cold, but I was tired of being the fallback plan. I figured a warm dinner and a few clear conversations might help. Maybe even remind them that I'm a person with limits. But that evening just confirmed everything I'd been afraid to admit. Mom showed up 2 hours late, complaining that her Uber driver didn't know how to take instructions. Emma waltzed in right behind her, holding 2 shopping bags and snapping selfies in my entryway mirror. Neither of them complimented the meal I'd spent all afternoon preparing. Instead, Mom made a snide comment about how I still hadn't upgraded my kitchen. Emma just rolled her eyes at the holiday playlist I had running and asked if I had any wine that wasn't grocery store cheap. I should have said something. I should have kicked them out right then and there. But I didn't. I laughed it off, made a joke about how this is why I eat alone, and poured them both drinks. That's how it always went. I deflected with humor. They took it as permission to keep pushing. Later that night, I overheard a conversation between them while I was loading the dishwasher. They didn't know I could hear them from the kitchen, but the apartment isn't that big. Mom, I don't know why he's so stingy lately. He's got over $100,000 just sitting on his card. I checked. Emma, seriously? Then what's the problem? Just give me the card. I'll use it. He won't even notice. Mom laughs. Exactly. He doesn't look at the statements. He never has. They both burst out laughing. I stood there, frozen, a plate in my hand and my heart sinking. That wasn't the first time they'd used my money without asking. But it was the first time I realized it wasn't just desperation, it was entitlement. It wasn't, we need help. It was, he owes us. And they didn't even feel the need to hide it anymore. They were laughing about it, right in my home, as if they were in on some joke I hadn't been told. That night, I didn't confront them. I just smiled, played along, and handed Emma an Uber gift card on her way out. She hugged me like I was Santa Claus. Mom kissed me on the cheek and whispered, "You're such a good boy, Aiden." I closed the door behind them and stood there for a long time, my fingers twitching, trying to figure out whether I was angry or just heartbroken. Maybe both. I didn't sleep that night. I kept replaying that one line. He won't even notice. It hit me harder than I thought it would. Not because of the money. Honestly, I'd learned to let that go. It was the dismissal. The way they assumed I was too checked out or too spineless to even notice they were draining me. The next morning, I checked my bank account. Nothing looked out of the ordinary yet. But my gut told me it was only a matter of time. And that's when I started planning. I wasn't going to yell. I wasn't going to cry. I wasn't going to threaten. I was going to wait. I was going to let them think they'd won. And when the time came, I was going to make sure they noticed. A week after Christmas, I got a call from my mom while I was in a Zoom meeting. She never texts first, she just calls. Over and over. I let it ring, figuring she'd leave a voicemail if it was urgent. She didn't. Then came the second call, and the third. By the fourth, I had to mute my mic and step away from the meeting. Hello. Oh, finally, she said, exasperated like I'd left a crying baby on a sidewalk. Aiden, I need you to come help me with Emma. My stomach tightened. What's wrong? She got into an argument at the Apple store. Something about her ID not matching the credit card or whatever. Wait, I interrupted. What credit card? There was a pause. I heard her shuffle, maybe walk into another room. Her voice dropped slightly. The one you gave me, remember? I didn't give you a card, I said slowly. I let you use it once. For groceries. Over a year ago. Well, don't be dramatic, she snapped. You never asked for it back. My jaw clenched. Because I assumed you'd return it. Or not use it again without asking. I didn't think you'd mind, she said, brushing it off. Emma needed a new phone. And since you're always working and ignoring your family, I figured. You figured what? I asked. That I'd just pay for it because you decided I wasn't using the money for anything important? Silence. I could hear her breathing. Then she said something that genuinely stunned me. Aiden, you're a man. You don't have a family to feed. What else is money for if not to help your mother and sister? That was it. That was the root of it. Not a misunderstanding. Not an accident. Just entitlement. I ended the call before I said something I'd regret. Later that evening, I went through my credit card statements with a fine-tooth comb. Dozens of purchases, most of them recent, some stretching back months, that I hadn't made. Ulta, Zara, Nordstrom, Uber Eats from cities I hadn't even visited, a $450 facial at some med spa in Beverly Hills. Emma didn't live in Beverly Hills, but her Instagram, I noticed, had tagged the spa just 3 days earlier with a selfie captioned, Self-Care Queen #blessed. I wasn't angry. I was something worse. I felt betrayed, like my trust had been turned into a coupon book and passed around. I had hoped it was just a one-time thing, maybe a moment of weakness. But it was a pattern, a lifestyle, funded by me. And they didn't even feel bad. A few days later, Mom dropped by my apartment unannounced. She rang the bell with that same old rhythm. 3 quick presses, like she owned the door. Hi, honey. She smiled like nothing was wrong, pushing past me with a bag of laundry. You don't mind if I do a quick load here, do you? My dryer's been acting up. I stood there, not moving. Mom, we need to talk. She didn't stop walking. About what? Oh, did you see Emma's new shoes? So classy, right? She's finally starting to look like a real lady. I followed her into the kitchen. How much did they cost? She shrugged, pretending she didn't know. A couple hundred? Maybe 3. I pulled up my banking app. They were $1,140. From Louboutin. Paid with my card. She blinked. Well, that's a small price to pay to help your sister get her confidence back. I sat down at the table. Do you even hear yourself? She turned, holding a towel. You're being selfish, Aiden. You don't understand how hard it's been for Emma. She didn't get the chances you did. She didn't take the chances she had, I said, voice flat. Mom's tone hardened. You think you're better than us just because you have a job with benefits and a car lease? I didn't respond. I was afraid if I opened my mouth again, it would turn into yelling. She eventually left, laundry still in the bag. No apology. No acknowledgement. Just a passive-aggressive. Maybe next time don't invite family over if you're going to act like a stranger. I didn't speak to either of them for a week. Then Emma texted me, not to apologize, but to ask if I'd mind ordering her a MacBook for school. Never mind that she wasn't enrolled anywhere. I ignored the message. 10 minutes later, I got a voice memo. Seriously? You're gonna ghost me now? After everything Mom's done for you? This is why people say money changes people. You act like you don't even know us anymore. If I had your kind of money, I'd share it without being such a jerk about it. I saved the memo, just in case. That was the moment I realized this wasn't just about entitlement. It was about control. They thought they owned me. That my success wasn't mine, it was theirs. Something they were owed. Something I was supposed to pay in installments. And still, I didn't confront them. I started making quiet moves instead. First, I flagged the card, reported suspicious charges, ordered a replacement, and had it shipped to my work address. Then I changed my passwords, put extra alerts on my accounts, set up biometric locks where I hadn't before. Every purchase over $500 would now require a verbal confirmation. And then, just to see what would happen, I left the old card active for one more week, just one. I didn't want revenge yet. I wanted proof. Because part of me still wondered, am I overreacting? Maybe they really didn't know better. Maybe they thought I was okay with it, that I was just sharing like a good son and brother. But on a Thursday afternoon, while I was at work, it happened. A notification popped up on my phone. Charge attempt declined. $96,417 at Lux Row Boutique. I stared at it. Then another came through. Suspicious transaction flagged for review. Please confirm if this is you. My heart was pounding. I clicked no. 10 seconds later, another ping. Attempted transaction denied. Jewelry Emporium. $11,950. I turned my phone over and took a deep breath. My palms were sweating. They were doing it again. Only this time, they weren't just dipping their toes in. They were going for it all. That night, I went home early. I checked Emma's Instagram. New stories posted at the mall. Mirrored escalators, glimmering glass storefronts, a boomerang of her holding a champagne flute. Then a video of her spinning in front of a full-length mirror with caption, "Spoiled." Finally, #deserved. In the background, I could hear Mom laughing. I recognized her voice like a scratch I couldn't itch. My phone rang. I let it go to voicemail. Then I listened. It was Emma, breathless, panicked. "Hey Aiden. Weird thing just happened. I think your card's broken or something. Like, it worked, and then it didn't. Can you call the bank and fix it? We're kind of stuck at the store. They already bagged everything. Bagged everything. She was expecting me to fix it. Like I was the help desk. No apology. No shame. Just confusion that the free fountain had suddenly run dry. It wasn't just about the money anymore. It wasn't even about respect. It was about whether or not I still wanted to be part of this family. And I wasn't sure if I did. But I was sure of one thing. They'd taken their last shopping spree on my dime. And next time we spoke, it wasn't going to be a friendly family dinner. It was going to be the beginning of something else entirely. I didn't answer Emma's call that night. I didn't answer the next morning either, despite 5 more calls, 2 voicemails, and a text that read, "Seriously, you need to fix your card." The cashier said it was flagged for fraud. I'm standing here like an idiot. That one made me smile. She had no idea I'd already spoken to the fraud department and explained everything in detail. I told them in no uncertain terms. Any charges over $500, unless verified by me directly, are unauthorized. I gave them the exact locations where the card might be abused and even described Emma and my mother, down to their voices and typical shopping patterns. I'm not trying to report identity theft, I told the rep. I'm trying to catch 2 people in the act. I just need you to let me know when it happens. They did exactly that. Now I had what I needed. Proof, confirmation, evidence. But I wasn't done. See, up until now, I had taken the high road, kept my cool, tried to salvage the relationship, tried to be understanding. But this wasn't just about boundaries anymore. It was about dignity, about respect, about not being walked over like a doormat in my own family. And then came the final straw. That weekend, I decided to pay Mom a visit. I hadn't seen her in person since that Christmas dinner, and there was part of me, just a stubborn, naive sliver, that hoped maybe she'd apologize. Acknowledge what happened. Tell me it had gotten out of hand. I showed up around noon with a small box of pastries. She opened the door in silk pajamas and fur slippers. "Wow," I said. "You look comfortable." She waved me in. "I was just doing some online shopping. You want tea?" I nodded, trying to keep things civil. We sat in her living room, which, if I'm being honest, looked way nicer than it had any right to. I spotted a new marble coffee table, what looked like a Dyson air purifier, and a fresh orchid arrangement in a designer vase. None of that had been there a few months ago. I thought you were having money troubles, I said casually. She sipped her tea. Emma's been helping out. She's found some generous friends lately. Uh-huh. A weird silence settled between us. I could see she was testing my mood, gauging whether I'd bring up the card. I decided to rip the Band-Aid off. I know what you two tried to do, I said. The luxury spree. Nearly $100,000 in charges. She didn't blink. It was for Emma. I stared at her. You don't even deny it. She sighed, setting her teacup down. Aiden, I'm tired of pretending. You act like this is some betrayal, but it's not. It's just money. You make more in a year than I've made in a decade. You don't need all of it. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. It's mine, Mom. That's the point. She waved her hand dismissively. You've always been so possessive. That's your problem. You think giving makes you weak. No, I said. I think being stolen from makes me angry. Her eyes narrowed. Don't dramatize it. You weren't robbed. Your family. And family justifies fraud now. She stood, slowly. You're making this a bigger deal than it needs to be. Do you know what your father would say if he were still around? I clenched my fists. Don't. She smiled. He'd say, Aiden needs to learn how to share. That boy was always a little too attached to his wallet. I stood up. You're not going to guilt me into this. But she wasn't done. As I turned to leave, she said, well, maybe next time, don't leave your info lying around if you're so protective. I didn't force you to be careless. That's when I knew it wasn't just Emma. Mom had been behind all of it, coordinating it, encouraging it, enabling it, maybe even more than I thought. It wasn't about need. It was about greed. And worse, she genuinely believed she'd done nothing wrong. I left without another word. I spent the next day making copies, documents, screenshots, flag charges, voice memos, text messages. I organized it all into a neat little folder on my desktop, proof_archive_a. Not because I planned to take them to court. Not yet. But because I needed to be ready. For anything. The emotional whiplash was real. 1 minute, I'd be angry, furious, even. The next, I'd feel this sick pit of guilt in my stomach. Like I was betraying them just by protecting myself. That's what years of manipulation does to you. It makes you feel like you're the villain for setting boundaries. The next major blow came 3 days later. I came home from work to find the front door to my apartment building propped open. I didn't think much of it at first. People forget to let it close all the time. But when I got to my unit, I noticed something strange. The door wasn't fully shut. I pushed it open slowly. And there, sitting on my couch like it was hers, was Emma, wearing one of my hoodies. Hey, she said brightly. I needed a place to crash. I blinked. How did you get in here? She grinned. Mom still had that spare key from when you moved in. I knew you wouldn't mind. I didn't even know what to say. You broke into my home. Oh, stop, she said, rolling her eyes. You make it sound like I smashed a window. She had bags with her, luggage, actually, like she was planning to stay a while. My fridge was open, and I noticed a half-eaten slice of cake on the kitchen counter. You've been here all day? I asked. She nodded. Well, I needed to charge my phone. And I figured, why not hang out? You're always working anyway. I stood there, frozen. You can't just walk into my place and make yourself at home. That's not okay. She scoffed. God, Aiden, you're so dramatic. This is what family does. We support each other. We share. That word again. Share. I looked at her. Really looked at her. Sitting there like she belonged. Like I should be grateful to have her using my apartment like an Airbnb. She had no idea she'd crossed a line I couldn't uncross. I didn't yell. I didn't threaten. I just took out my phone and dialed the locksmith. She laughed. What? You think changing the locks is going to stop Mom and me? I didn't respond. But in my head, the dominoes were already falling. And I wasn't going to catch a single one. Emma stayed for 3 days. 3 days of passive-aggressive comments, stolen leftovers, and mysterious Uber Eats charges I didn't authorize. Every time I came home, she'd be sprawled on the couch in one of my sweatshirts, watching reality TV at full volume like she was living rent-free in a 5-star hotel. Which, in a way, she was. I told her, repeatedly, to leave. She'd smirk, wave a painted nail in my direction, and say, You really need to relax, Aiden. You've gotten so uptight lately. Mom said you used to be fun. That one hit deeper than I care to admit. Because it wasn't just about her invading my space. It was about the weight of everything leading up to that moment. Years of guilt, of bending over backwards, of trying to be the good son. of watching my own mother and sister weaponize my decency and twist it into obligation. I didn't argue with Emma anymore. Not after the second night. That was when I came home late from work to find her lounging in my bed, scrolling through TikTok like she owned the place. She'd tossed my clothes on the floor. My toothbrush was missing. She'd even reset my Spotify playlist on the living room speakers to some influencer's podcast about manifesting luxury. I went into the guest room and slept in silence. I didn't sleep well. That was the beginning of the unraveling. The next morning, I filed a police report. I didn't press charges yet, but I wanted documentation. I needed it on record that she was in my home without permission. I called my landlord, explained the situation, and requested a door camera install. He was sympathetic but couldn't do much. Family stuff's always messy, he said, like it was just a squabble about who got the last slice of pizza at Thanksgiving. I started keeping my laptop and important documents at work. I stopped leaving my phone unattended. I even moved some of my savings to a different bank entirely, one Emma and Mom didn't know about. Just in case. She left the third morning. Not because I asked again, but because she said she had better plans. Left behind a sink full of dishes, 2 wine glasses, and a single sticky note on the fridge that said, "You really should thank us for keeping you from turning into a lonely weirdo." That one broke something in me. It wasn't just the invasion of space or the entitlement. It was the fact that she genuinely believed she was doing me a favor. That her presence, her chaos, her mooching was somehow rescuing me from my own quiet, organized life. After she left, I sat on the edge of my bed for a long time, staring at nothing. I don't know how to explain the kind of tired I felt. It wasn't physical. It was something else. A mental and emotional heaviness I'd been carrying for years, finally tipping over. The kind that makes your chest hurt for no reason. The kind that makes you question everything. Why had I let this go on for so long? Why had I convinced myself that giving meant loving? Why did I feel like I was the bad guy, just for trying to live in peace? The worst part was, I had no one to talk to about it. I had friends, sure, but I never told them the full truth. It always felt embarrassing to admit your own mother and sister were using you. It made me feel naive, weak, like a sucker. So I played it off, jokes about family drama, sarcastic comments about being the Bank of Aden. But deep down, I felt like a fraud. Like the successful, stable adult everyone thought I was didn't actually exist. That night, I stood in front of my bathroom mirror and stared at myself for a long time. I looked older than I remembered. Tired eyes, jaw clenched tight. A man who worked 60 hours a week and still felt like a disappointment in his own family. I sat on the floor of my living room and opened my laptop. I created a spreadsheet, titled it simply, The Ledger, and I started listing everything. Every dollar I'd ever given them. Every loan that was never repaid. Every unauthorized charge. Every Uber ride. Every late-night Venmo. Every impulsive shopping spree they'd spun into an emergency. The total was over $136,000. $136,000. That was my down payment for a house. A year of travel. 10 years of peace. Gone. I stared at the number until it blurred on the screen. And then I added a second column. What they gave in return. It stayed empty. That's when I started planning. Quietly. Carefully. Without confrontation. I changed my phone number. I created a new email. I moved all my remaining funds to the second bank account and closed the old one. Reported the card lost. Had my new card issued under a variation of my name. New PIN. New billing address. Everything. I even filed a request with HR to have my paychecks routed to a different account. No more paper statements. No more shared anything. I started cleaning out my apartment. Not just physically, emotionally. I tossed out old gifts from them. Photos I didn't even like. The sweater Mom gave me 3 Christmases ago that still had the tag on it. The birthday card from Emma that said, "You're the best brother money can buy." At the time, I'd laughed. Now it felt like a prophecy. I stopped answering their messages. At first, it was quiet. A day or two of silence. Then the texts started rolling in. From Mom. "Hey, sweetie. Haven't heard from you. Everything okay? Emma said you've been acting weird. You know she means well, right? Don't shut us out over a little misunderstanding. You're still coming to dinner Sunday, right?" From Emma. "Are you mad at me or something? I was just messing around. You're so sensitive. Okay, but you were being a jerk first. You should have just paid. It's not like you're broke." I ignored them. Then came the guilt bombs. "Mom, I raised you, Aiden. Don't forget who changed your diapers. Your sister looks up to you. She's not perfect, but neither are you. We need help, and you're abandoning your family when we need you most. Emma, this is why you'll die alone, you know. You think your money makes you better than us? Good luck finding a woman who'll love you for you. That last one almost got to me. Almost. But I held firm. Because somewhere between Emma eating my leftovers and Mom blaming me for being careless with my card, I realized something profound. They didn't love me. Not really. They loved what I could do for them, what I could give them. And the moment I stopped giving, I stopped being useful. So I decided to become useless. To them, anyway. I didn't block their numbers. I wanted to see what they'd say, to track the unraveling, to witness how quickly affection turned to venom when the cash flow dried up. By week 3, the tone shifted. Mom, fine. If that's how you want to be, don't expect us to come running when you need help someday. You've made your choice. Emma, don't ever talk to me again. Selfish, bitter loser. I screenshotted everything. Saved every message in a folder named receipts. And still, I said nothing. No rebuttal. No confrontation. No closure. Just silence. It was the most peaceful month I'd had in years. But I knew it wasn't over. Because people like them, people who live off manipulation, don't just let go when their target escapes. They circle. They plot. They wait. So I waited too. Because I wasn't just walking away anymore. I was building the exit ramp. And when the time came, I wouldn't just leave. I'd shut the door behind me. And this time, I'd lock it. By the time spring rolled around, something strange started happening. I started smiling again. Not the forced, polite kind I used to give at family dinners while internally calculating how much they'd drained from me that month. This was the quiet kind. The kind you give yourself when the house is clean, the sun is coming through the blinds just right, and for once, you don't owe anyone anything. The first change wasn't even that dramatic. I woke up one Saturday, stretched, made coffee, and realized my apartment was still clean. Nothing had moved without my permission. No sink full of wine-stained glasses. No mysterious half-eaten takeout. No perfume lingering in the hall from someone who didn't pay rent. Just peace. And slowly, that peace became addictive. Work started feeling lighter too. Funny how much mental space you reclaim when you're not babysitting a full-grown adult and fending off text barrages from a manipulative mother. I started arriving earlier, speaking up more during team meetings, and even pitched a product idea that our director decided to greenlight for beta testing. Within 2 months, I was promoted. Product lead. Bigger salary. Equity. Corner office. And not a single soul in my family congratulated me, because I didn't tell them. I wanted this win to be mine. Untouched by their guilt, their fake enthusiasm, their inevitable ask. I used the raise to do something small but symbolic. I booked a trip to Oregon. I'd always wanted to hike through the Columbia River Gorge. I spent 3 days off the grid. Just me, a rental car, and a series of trailheads that led to waterfalls so massive and roaring, it felt like the earth was finally shouting back on my behalf. And up there, surrounded by pine and mist and nothing but my own breath, I felt something I hadn't felt since I was a kid. Freedom. Not just from them. From me. From the version of myself that believed I had to be needed to be loved. I came home with a full camera roll and a new wallpaper on my phone. A photo of me, mid-laugh, standing near the edge of Waklella Falls, water spraying behind me like a baptism. That picture? That was the turning point. From then on, I started moving differently. I opened a new savings account and gave it a stupid nickname, Freedom Fund. I didn't tell anyone what it was for, just that I'd deposit $1,000 every month into it. No exceptions. I changed apartments, too. Moved into a high-rise downtown, a place with a concierge and keycard-only access. I told my landlord to terminate the old lease early and keep the deposit. And when I packed, I left behind everything that reminded me of them. Old photos, birthday cards, that dumb Lululemon gift bag Emma once reused as wrapping paper. My new place had a view of the skyline, of possibility. It also had a doorman, one who'd remember faces. So if certain people ever tried to drop by, I'd get a call before they got anywhere near my door. I started dressing better, too. Less hoodie on a deadline, and more grown man with peace of mind. It wasn't vanity, it was armor. Because I realized something. When you look like you have control, people stop trying to take it from you. Old friends started reaching out again. I think they noticed the shift before I did. I wasn't venting about my family anymore. I wasn't flaking on plans because mom needed help moving again or Emma's stuck at LAX with no ride. I showed up, fully present, unbothered. One night, after drinks with some college friends, I caught myself laughing so hard my stomach hurt. And I remember thinking, this is what they almost stole from me. But the rise wasn't just about money or peace. It was about clarity. I started journaling, not in some fluffy, motivational Instagram way, but brutally. Honestly, I wrote down every manipulation I could remember. Every time mom used dad's memory as leverage. Every time Emma played the poor struggling sister card, only to blow the cash on shoes and sushi. Every time I said, yes, when I wanted to scream no. I filled 2 notebooks. By the end of the second one, I noticed a pattern. They never gave. Not without strings. Not once. That realization didn't make me bitter. It made me strategic. See, I knew something they didn't. While they thought I was sulking, licking my wounds in silence, I was watching, planning, laying a foundation brick by brick, out of reach of their tantrums and entitlement. And the best part? They had no idea. Emma still posted selfies with inspirational captions about cutting off toxic people. The irony wasn't lost on me. Mom still sent the occasional guilt-laced email. Hope you're well. I saw a mother-son cooking class we could take together. Only $300. Let me know if you'll pay or if I should put it on the usual card, smiley face. I didn't reply, but I did add it to the archive. Every interaction, every manipulation, was another log for the fire I was quietly building. Because deep down, I knew there would be one final push. One last act of desperation where they'd try to pull me back in. And when that happened, I'd be ready. In the meantime, I kept growing. I signed up for a mentorship program, started guiding a few younger developers, and realized I loved it. Watching them light up over things I'd once struggled with reminded me how far I'd come. They saw me as someone worth learning from, not because of my bank account, but because of my boundaries. That was the word that changed everything for me. Boundaries. I used to think saying no made me cold. That distance made me heartless. But now I knew better. Boundaries weren't walls, they were filters. They kept the poison out so I could grow without being constantly pruned down by guilt. Then something unexpected happened. A recruiter from a much larger company reached out. They'd seen my name on a few product credits and were impressed by my team's numbers. They wanted to talk. Just talk. I went to the interview out of curiosity. I left with an offer that nearly doubled my current salary. For the first time in my life, I didn't feel like I needed to say yes just to prove something. I took 2 weeks to think it over. Negotiated. Asked for benefits that prioritized my life, not just my labor. And when I signed, I didn't tell a soul in my family, but I did tell myself, out loud, standing in the middle of my new kitchen, you did this. They didn't. I celebrated with a bottle of wine and a steak I cooked myself. Watched the lights of the city flicker like some kind of cosmic applause. I wasn't rich, not yet, but I was free. And that was worth more than anything they ever took. The last piece of the rise came quietly, in a beige envelope. It was a wedding invitation. Emma's, addressed to Mr. Aiden Carter plus guest. Inside, a handwritten note from Mom. We'd love to see you there. Emma is finally settling down. Bring your checkbook. We're doing a honeymoon fund. No phone call. No apology. Just the assumption that I'd show up, smile, and pay. And that's when I knew. They hadn't changed. But I had. And what I had planned next would change everything. 2 days after receiving the wedding invitation, I stared at it for a long time on my kitchen counter. Its pale pink envelope still half torn, the glittery cursive Emma and Blake. A celebration of love, almost daring me to rip it up. Not because I was upset that she was getting married. No, I hoped, for her sake, that this guy wasn't another accessory like the designer bag she paraded around. I was staring at it because it was a test. A trap dressed up in lace and calligraphy. You don't invite someone you've called a selfish, bitter loser to the most photographed day of your life. You don't include a honeymoon fund note under the RSVP card unless you expect them to bring their checkbook. This wasn't an olive branch. It was bait. But what they didn't know, what they never realized, was that the man they were trying to manipulate hadn't existed in months. The old Aiden, the one who said yes with a tired smile and quietly footed the bill, was gone. This time, I wasn't walking into their world. They were stepping into mine. And I had plans. It started with the venue. I called a friend from work, Tasha. She had a cousin who ran event security in the city. Big weddings, corporate galas, even the occasional politician's fundraiser. The kind of person who knew everyone on the ground. Caterers, photographers, guest list checkers. I invited Tasha out for lunch and casually mentioned Emma's wedding, dropping the name of the venue printed on the card. Her cousin, it turned out, had already heard of it. Apparently, the bride's mother, my mother, had been calling the planning office nonstop to negotiate family discounts and deals for exposure. I choked on my coffee. Wait, exposure? Tasha nodded. You know, the usual scam. Claiming her daughter's a micro-influencer and saying she'll tag the vendors in a few Instagram posts if they knock 30% off. I wasn't even surprised. That was textbook Emma and Mom, flashing the illusion of status without ever earning any of it. I leaned in. Can you do me a favor? Nothing major. Just let me know who's running the guest list. Tasha raised an eyebrow, but smiled. You're not thinking of crashing your sister's wedding, are you? No, I said calmly. I'm thinking of showing up properly prepared. Over the next 2 weeks, I started collecting information, not maliciously, but meticulously. A passive kind of preparation. I learned the guest count, the seating arrangements, the name of the wedding planner, the DJ, and the florist. I even managed to get a copy of the digital gift registry. It was ambitious. A $1,500 Dyson hairdryer, a $3,200 espresso machine, a $12,000 contribution option labeled, "Help us upgrade to first class on our honeymoon flight." The nerve. But buried halfway through the list was something that made me sit back in my chair, stunned. A contribution option labeled, "The Wedding Fund, in memory of Dad." Next to it, "Help us honor the man who made all this possible." And under that, a description. Our late father always dreamed of giving his daughter the wedding of her dreams. He left behind a modest inheritance, but it's been tight. Any contributions will help us fulfill his vision. My stomach dropped. Dad didn't leave Emma a cent. He'd passed suddenly, 10 years ago, and the life insurance payout, $50,000, had been split equally between me and Mom. I remembered every detail because I'd used my half to pay for college. Mom had told me she was investing Emma's portion for when she was older. Emma was 16 at the time. If anything, Emma owed Dad's memory money. But here she was, twisting it, selling our grief for likes, monetizing it with a PayPal button and a Pinterest mood board. That's when the cold clarity came back. This wedding wasn't a celebration. It was a heist. One they were disguising as tradition, hoping people would show up in suits and heels and not notice the con happening in real time. But I noticed. And this time, I was going to make them feel it. I started small. I called an attorney. Not to sue them, yet, but to begin the process of reclaiming my credit history. We ran a full report together, flagged anything suspicious, and filed formal disputes on over $70,000 of past charges I had previously let slide. You sure you want to do this now? He asked, glancing up. Could get messy. I nodded. Exactly. Then I opened a new email account. From there, I registered an anonymous tip submission to a financial ethics blog that specialized in wedding fraud. I included screenshots of the honeymoon fund note, the fake memorial registry, and links to Emma's Instagram stories bragging about snagging free stuff from clueless vendors. I didn't sign my name. I didn't need to. Emma had done all the advertising herself. Next, I met with an old friend from high school, Ryan, who now ran a small but growing YouTube channel about family finance scams and financial red flags in plain sight. He'd once told me if I ever had a story, a real story, he'd do a full expose. I gave him one. Leave names out for now, I said, but keep the details. He grinned. Oh, this is gold. It's like a Hallmark movie and a true crime doc had a baby. I didn't laugh, because for me, it wasn't entertainment. It was chess, and the board was almost set. But the final piece didn't fall into place until I had coffee with Blake, Emma's fiancé. We ran into each other, purely by coincidence, at a cafe near my new office. I almost didn't say anything, but curiosity won. Blake, I said cautiously. He turned, blinking. Aiden. We hadn't spoken since the Christmas before last. Back then, he was quiet, nervous, like he was always walking on eggshells. I could tell he was smart, but unsure, probably overwhelmed by Emma's whirlwind version of love. Didn't expect to see you here, I said, offering a neutral smile. Yeah, Emma's at fittings all day, he replied, rubbing the back of his neck. It's been a lot. I nodded. Big weddings usually are. He hesitated, then leaned in. Can I ask you something? Sure. Did your family ever, I don't know, use you for stuff? That one sentence lit a fire in my chest. Constantly, I said, locking eyes with him. He sighed. I thought it was just me. We sat for an hour. I didn't overshare. I wasn't trying to sabotage his relationship. But I did give him just enough truth. Enough to plant a seed. Enough to make him ask questions. As we left, I offered a handshake. If you ever want to talk more, I said, I'm around. No pressure. He shook it. And I knew he felt the shift too. Because for the first time, someone had told him, you're not crazy. This isn't normal. That coffee was the last move. Now all I had to do was wait. For the wedding. For the fallout. For the match to hit the gasoline they'd been spilling for years. And when it happened, I wouldn't raise my voice. I wouldn't throw a fit. I'd just be ready. Because this time, the story wouldn't end with me footing the bill. It would end with them finally paying the price. The wedding was held at a vineyard estate 2 hours outside the city. A place so photogenic it practically begged to be hashtagged. White chairs lined the hillside. Soft jazz drifted from unseen speakers, and every surface seemed to sparkle with curated elegance. It was the kind of wedding that looked effortless but cost someone a second mortgage, or, in Emma's case, probably several maxed-out credit cards and a small army of manipulated favors. I arrived early, alone, in a tailored charcoal suit. No tie. Calm. Nobody knew I was coming. Technically, I had RSVP'd no, but the thing about a family like mine, they never kept organized lists. Mom assumed I'd show up out of guilt. Emma likely thought I'd cave last minute and bring a check as a peace offering. They had no idea I was already there. 3 steps ahead, the entire board mapped out. The ceremony was set to begin at 3 p.m. I took my place in the shadows, near the tree line that bordered the outer reception area. It was quiet, away from the crowd, with a perfect view of everything. At 2:48 p.m., the DJ's laptop froze mid-sound check. No music, no ambient background noise, just awkward silence and the sound of distant chatter. A few heads turned. By 2:52 p.m., the venue manager was pulled aside by a woman in a black pantsuit, the fraud investigator I had tipped off anonymously 2 weeks earlier, who'd been waiting for this moment like a wolf in tall grass. She had a clipboard, a stern tone, and a stack of documents. I watched from a distance as she asked to speak to the bride's mother. They escorted my mom from the seating area just as she was bragging about the hand-sewn lace on Emma's veil to a distant cousin. At 2:55 p.m., the photographer, booked at a discounted rate thanks to a promise of exposure, walked away, muttering something under his breath and tossing his camera bag into the back seat of a car. Apparently, someone had leaked a set of Instagram DMs where Emma assured him she had celebrity connections and would get him at least 10K new followers if he waived his usual fee. Someone like me. The first audible gasps from the guests came when the florist approached the altar to remove several centerpieces. Non-payment. They'd been told half upfront, half after. But once a few screenshots surfaced, messages from my mom asking if pretty arrangements could be traded for a tag and a free lunch, they decided exposure wasn't worth it. By 2:58 p.m., the ceremony was officially delayed. Guests started murmuring. The wedding planner, bless her patience, did everything she could to keep the mood light. But the cracks had formed, and everyone could smell the smoke. At 3:05 p.m., Emma stepped out from the bridal suite, flanked by 2 bridesmaids and her hairstylist. She looked flawless, irritated, and confused. Why hasn't the music started? She snapped. Before anyone could answer, the woman in the black pantsuit returned. Calm, unshaken. She handed Emma a printed packet. Ma'am, she said, this is a formal notice regarding misuse of a registered memorial fund. The silence was instant. Every pair of eyes turned to her. Emma's voice cracked. What are you talking about? The woman held up her clipboard. You collected over $14,000 in contributions under the claim that your deceased father had left behind an inheritance you were supplementing with public donations. However, no such inheritance exists. Furthermore, it appears you used those funds on personal luxury expenses, including, she flipped a page, a Louis Vuitton purse, 3 brunch-themed photo shoots, and a spa day for your bridal party. Gasps. Real ones. My mother, red-faced and still clutching a mimosa, tried to speak up. This is a misunderstanding. It was just a theme, something symbolic. The woman didn't flinch. You labeled it a memorial fund. Emma's lips parted, but nothing came out. The guests? They started whispering. Loudly. Phones came out. The bride was crying before the ceremony even began, and it wasn't the romantic kind of crying. It was the caught red-handed with receipts kind. And I hadn't even moved yet, because my part was just beginning. At 3:15 p.m., Blake appeared. He looked overwhelmed, red in the face, hair slightly undone, and holding his phone like it had just delivered a death sentence. Which, in a way, it had, because on that phone was a video sent to him anonymously. A screen recording of Emma and my mother sitting in my old apartment, laughing about how Aiden won't even notice them using his credit card again. Followed by a clip of Emma bragging on Instagram that her new shoes were on my dumb brother's dime. And finally, a screenshot of the registry page where they claimed the wedding was Dad's final wish. Blake stepped toward the altar, and then, loud enough for every single guest to hear, he said, "I'm not marrying someone who lies about her dead father for cash." He took off his boutonniere, placed it gently on the seat meant for the groom, and walked out. The quiet afterward was deafening. Emma didn't chase him. She didn't speak. She just stood there, frozen in lace and silence, as everything unraveled in front of her. Guests began to leave. The caterer started collecting untouched hors d'oeuvres. The DJ, finally back online, played a single track, The Sound of Silence. A tech guy with a dark sense of humor, apparently. And me? I stayed back, out of view, watched the whole thing with a stillness I didn't know I was capable of. Because this revenge? It wasn't loud. It wasn't messy. It was measured. It was justice, served cold, with a side of poetic timing. I didn't get my money back that day. I didn't demand repayment or scream, "I told you so." But I got something else. Something better. Closure. Real, irreversible, humiliating closure. The illusion was shattered. Their lies exposed, not by my word, but by theirs. They did it to themselves. All I did was hand them the mirror. And now? Now it was finally over. The fallout wasn't loud. There were no screaming matches in parking lots. No late-night apology calls. No public declarations of guilt. Just the slow, inescapable unraveling of everything Emma and my mother had built on deception. The Monday after the wedding that never was, I woke up early. I didn't check social media. I didn't need to. By 9 a.m., my inbox had 3 emails and 2 voicemails from people who'd attended the ceremony. Former friends of the family, distant cousins, and even one of Emma's college roommates. All of them apologizing to me. One email read, "Aiden, I'm so sorry. I had no idea how deep it went. I wish I'd seen it sooner." That made me laugh. Not because it was funny, but because it was the first time anyone had acknowledged what I'd been trying to explain for years. Emma's Instagram was gone. Not deactivated, deleted. Every curated selfie, every quote about healing and self-worth, every fake brand collab wiped clean. Her digital identity had been built on borrowed luxury, and now that the lights were on, the show was over. I found out through a coworker, whose wife worked at a boutique PR firm, that one of Emma's sponsors had pulled a partnership mid-campaign after being tipped off about the wedding fraud. Apparently, the tip included screenshots of donation misuse and the fake memorial fund. The PR firm sent a cease and desist, demanding Emma remove their branding from all her posts. But by then, the account was already scrubbed. According to Blake's best man, who DM'd me quietly the week after, Emma tried to spin it. Said I had hacked her, that the clips were edited, taken out of context, all lies. But Blake had already seen enough. And more importantly, heard enough. The video had included not just the audio of Emma and Mom scheming, but also Blake's own voice, captured unknowingly in the background, when he had once hesitated over wedding costs and Emma had whispered, "Don't worry. Aiden will cave. He always does." That was her mistake. She underestimated this version of Aiden. Blake moved out of the apartment they'd been renting together. According to mutuals, he took the dog but left the couch. Emma's name wasn't on the lease. And since the wedding was called off just days before the marriage certificate was signed, she had no legal claim to anything he'd built. She went back to Mom's. Which brings us to her. Mom called me 3 times the week after the wedding. I didn't answer. I wanted to at first. A small part of me, the one trained over decades to feel responsible, wanted to pick up the phone, say something, offer closure. But then I listened to the voicemails. Each one worse than the last. The first was classic guilt. Aiden, please. I know you're angry, but you didn't have to ruin your sister's wedding. We could have talked about this privately. The second one had sharper edges. You embarrassed us. You humiliated your family in front of everyone. Was that your plan all along? And the third? That one was venom. You're not part of this family anymore. I saved them all. Didn't respond. Didn't block her either. Just let her voice sit there in digital purgatory, proof of everything I had finally escaped. A week later, I got a letter in the mail. Handwritten. From Mom. It wasn't an apology. It was a list of the people who didn't show up to Emma's recovery brunch, a pathetic attempt to spin the wedding debacle into a girls-only self-care event. It included a thinly veiled request for money to help cover emotional damages. A note at the bottom read, I know you still care, deep down. You just need to grow up and come home. I folded the letter neatly and fed it to my shredder. She was wrong. I had grown up. That's why I wasn't going back. The weeks turned to months. Emma went silent online. Rumor was, she took a job as a receptionist at a small salon on the edge of town. Not glamorous, but steady. No filters. No sponsorships. No audience. Mom stopped calling. Apparently, after Emma moved back in, things got tense. Without me as the golden goose, bills started piling up. The lifestyle they'd grown used to, wine nights, designer accessories, midweek spa days, faded fast. They blamed each other, fell into old patterns, argued about who had pushed Aiden too far. They missed the point completely. They thought I left because of one event, but I left because of every event. Because for years, they took and took and took, and convinced me I was lucky to be useful. I never went back to that version of myself. Instead, I focused on the new life I'd built. I finished my leadership certification at work, spoke at a small conference, started mentoring more junior staff. I even began dating again, real dating, not the rushed, distracted kind that used to happen between emergency family calls and midnight wire transfers. One night, months later, I went on a second date with someone who asked, Do you have any siblings? I paused, then said, Not anymore. It wasn't out of spite. It was out of truth. That chapter was over. The last time I saw either of them was on a random Thursday in September. I was walking out of a coffee shop downtown when I spotted them across the street, Emma and Mom, arguing about parking meters. They hadn't seen me. I stopped, for a second, just long enough to take it in. They looked older, tired, bitter, like two people who had gambled everything and lost. And me? I turned the corner, walked into the sun, and didn't look back. Because in the end, the greatest revenge wasn't their ruin. It was my peace. And they never got to take that from me again.
Like equestrian, what do you call it? Equestrian? How do you call it? Yeah, that. Just wing it. No. That's how you get into accidents. How much does skate school get you? So you do different levels. So first, like, you start on like, for example, you start on like the lowest level, and then if they think you're higher than level 1, you can go to level 2. And once you get to level, I think level 5, you can get into figure skating after that. So you have to do all of the levels before you can get into figure skating, and then after that you start learning tricks at different levels.